Russia, and Russia has a very tough terrain, very heavy snow, and in winter it becomes extremely cold. Therefore, in the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon Bonaparte did not survive and lost the war. This led to the concern of Europe in 1813. The concern of Europe. What happened in the concern of Europe? When Napoleonic France was defeated, European powers came together to establish balance of power, and this gave 100 years of peace to Europe. So all the countries including UK, Germany, Prussia, that time Germany known as Prussia, Russia also, they all came together and signed on the concert of Europe to establish peace. This led to 100 years of peace in Europe from 1830 to 1930 till the First World War. Now we will be jumping to the First World War, but just to inform you, a lot of events are happening simultaneously. There was an American Revolution that took place in 1773. We are not covering that because we are talking mainly of European history this time. It's related to world history and diplomacy. Parallelly, across from 1830 to 1890, there are a lot of events that happened in Europe. For example, there was a famous general known as Bismarck who rose in Germany. He led Germany to unification in 1870. German unification took place at that time. And gradually, Germany became very, very, very powerful in Europe. UK was one of the most powerful states because of its colonies. UK, that is United Kingdom, also became extremely industrialized because of its colonies, because of colonization. This is concern of Europe, gave 100 years of peace to Europe. Next is World War I. World War I. Now, what happened in World War I? The episodes of World War I are not important to us. Just understand that there is a country known as Serbia. So, a famous Francis Ferdinand, one of the princes of Serbia, was assassinated, and this led to the beginning of World War I. A lot of countries participated, but mainly it was UK, France, Germany, Serbia, Russia. Italy also participated. Russia backed out in between because in Russia the communist revolution took place in 1916-17. Therefore, the new regime under Lenin rejected fighting World War I and exited the World War. Russia backed out of the war after Bolshevik revolution. Germany was defeated. End of balance of power in Europe. This led to war. And Treaty of Versailles that we were discussing, also known as Versailles, but pronounced as Versailles. Treaty of Versailles was imposed. Massive destruction. Failure of realist interpretation came to the forefront, and this led to the rise of liberal theory. These were we already discussed. So if you feel like writing, it's okay, otherwise let's skip it. Gave Woodrow Wilson 14 points. We already discussed this. One thing that we had not discussed is that Woodrow Wilson's 14 points actually failed. Why? Because the concept of League of Nations that Woodrow Wilson had given failed to get passed in the US Congress. Now imagine, it failed to pass in US Congress. You are the US president. You give a conception to the world that we will do something for world peace. You gave the 14 points, 15 points, whatever, and then you failed to pass it in your post parliament. So Woodrow Wilson's liberal ideology actually failed at its birth itself because US Congress did not ratify the Charter of League of Nations. Okay? So League of Nations at its very birth was ineffective and infructuous. League of Nations at its very birth was ineffective. It was formed by the victors of the First World War, and they never wanted peace. They only wanted maximization of power. So this was the World War I. We are not getting into much detail. Versailles was imposed. League of Nations was born. League of Nations failed as a concept. There was failure of the Treaty of Versailles. Very heavy reparations were imposed on Germany. Very heavy reparations. The entire Rhine area of Germany was demilitarized. If you look, see, this is Germany. Okay, you are seeing this line. This is the Rhine coalfield. Rhine coalfield. This was deeply militarized. German bases were located here. This region was called as Alsace and Lorraine. Alsace and Lorraine. This was taken away from Germany. Okay, a very heavy cost of what had to be given. So the result was that Germany went into economic depression. And this gave fuel to the rise of a man named as world politics is the rise of Adolf Hitler. The rise of Adolf Hitler takes place and World War II begins in 1939. Okay? World War II begins in 1939. Failure of Treaty of Versailles, economic depression, rise of Adolf Hitler and World War. Failure of Treaty of Versailles, economic depression, the rise of Adolf Hitler, World War II. This is rise of Adolf Hitler. Very briefly explaining World War II because there is paucity of time. This is from 1939 to 45. What happened? This is rise of Adolf Hitler. What happens is that Hitler, in 1937, Hitler demands a specific chunk of land from Czechoslovakia. Don't even write this. Listen, this is like a story. Hitler demands a specific chunk of land from Czechoslovakia, known as Sudante land. Hitler demands a specific chunk of land from Czechoslovakia, known as Sudante land. The then leader of Czechoslovakia, his name was Chamberlain. He gave away Sudante land to Hitler. He thought that if we would, if we would appease Hitler, then Hitler would remain silent. So he did appeasement with Hitler and he gave away Sudante land to Hitler. But they had not understood that Hitler's quest was global hegemony. Hitler's quest was not for some piece of land. So immediately after 1937, within 2 years, in 1939, after breaking all the conventions and treaties and Treaty of Versailles, Hitler attacks Poland. In 1939, Hitler attacks Poland. See, this is Germany. This is Czechoslovakia. Hitler attacks Czechoslovakia. Okay? When Hitler attacks, these all are part of USSR. Belarus, Ukraine, Romania, these all are part of USSR. This is also part of USSR. No, Poland is not. So Hitler attacks Poland. When Hitler attacks Poland, France and UK attack Hitler. Okay? Hitler attacks France. 1940, Hitler gets to Paris, wins France. France comes under Hitler's control. Germany had a very unique style of fighting wars. So Germany had one of the best air forces at that time. But they also had a very unique style of fighting wars. Their armed forces undertook what is called as blitzkrieg. B-L-I-T-Z-K-R-I-E. You don't need to write, just listen it like a story. Blitzkrieg. What they would do is that they would quickly reach a stop. Like from Germany, they would march to France in no time. They would have air dominance, and within a few hours, they would get control over the territory. So there are multiple ways of fighting wars, but one of the ways of fighting wars is either through air power or through land power. Hitler utilized both of them together and captured a territory with lightning speed. So blitzkrieg in English means lightning. So when the German army fought, it was felt as if something is lightning on the adversaries. So whenever German army attacked, they were very brutal, and they would attack like blitzkrieg and they would capture it in time. Imagine a power like France got defeated by Germany, and Hitler got to Paris. And he started air bombing in UK. Churchill was the prime minister there. Mass level bombing in UK had started. So if you had seen, there was this movie Ramanujan. Anyone would have seen Ramanujan? Talks about the mathematician Ramanujan. He had gone to this London to study, and there is an episode that during the Second World War, on his university, the German airship attacks, and the very huge airships. So he attacks France, defeats this. Almost Victor was about to get defeated, but he does one mistake. The same mistake that 100 years back Napoleon had done. He attacks Russia. He had defeated Poland. He had defeated France. He was about to become the European leader. But one mistake he does, the same mistake that Napoleon had done. He attacks Russia. And again, Russia has the same advantage, good terrain, very difficult weather conditions, very snowy temperatures. The German army marched and tried to reach to Moscow, but failed to reach Moscow. The German army failed to reach Moscow, and it's very close. So I have to show you like this. It's very close. See, this Poland was at that point. Poland had lost. Poland was in German control, and this is Russia. They had attacked Russia, and they got defeated in Russia. Russia pulled back the defenses. Russia pushed the defenses, and gradually reached Berlin in 1942. UK also reached to Berlin in 1942, and Hitler committed suicide in his war. But the war did not stop. This was the second part. Now, ideally, when Hitler was defeated, there are also theories. There are also theories and speculations that Hitler was about to build a nuclear weapon. There were theories and speculations. In fact, there was intelligence with the CIA that Hitler was building nuclear weapons. There was nuclear research going on in Germany. This propelled the United States to build nuclear weapons. So let's move to the United States. The next example. United States. What happens is that Japan, there is Japan. Japan is there. If you see Japan, and there is United States. Japan had joined with the Axis powers. Who are the Axis powers? Germany and others. Germany, Italy, the Axis powers in the Second World War. It was led by the Japanese monarch Tosho. Japanese monarch Tosho. So what had happened is, and listen to this carefully. What had happened is that Japan had joined the side of Germany and Italy. Japan and US had a very fraught relationship at that time. Japan attacked USS ship in Pearl Harbor in 1943. Japan attacked USS ship in Pearl Harbor in 1943. The US did not take any immediate reaction. US is a very not reactionary. It's not reactionary country. It built its time, waited for the time. And meanwhile, out of the fear that Germany is actually developing nuclear weapons, United States started the nuclear research. It was led by a man named as Oppenheimer, Robert Jr. Oppenheimer. There is a place in the United States called as Los Alamos. In Los Alamos laboratory, they started their nuclear research, and by 1944, their nuclear research succeeded. They undertook the first test, the first nuclear test, and that became successful. In 1945, when the entire research was handed over to the US military, Oppenheimer had not thought that they would be using this. Because the war had almost come to an end. Germany was defeated. Adolf Hitler was dead. Japan was about to come to peace terms. There was no need to use nuclear weapons. But you know why it was nuclear weapon? Hegemony. This is the next topic that we study. US wanted to establish global hegemony. That I have the power much more than any other country in this world, and therefore I am the dominant player. It dropped the two nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan was decimated. When Japan was decimated, the entire world was shocked. For the first time in its history, nuclear weapons were used in war. In fact, there is a story. Robert Oppenheimer, who did the entire research for nuclear weapons, he was actually not willing to make use of it. He just felt that he will develop nuclear weapons and they would remain as they are now. And they would not come to use. He wanted them to use them only for deterrence purposes. But US President at that time, Harry Truman, went ahead of the way and actually fired the nuclear weapons. So he was shocked at the time and he felt that the entire nuclear was in his head. He became suicidal. Robert Oppenheimer. He felt that the massive loss of lives in Japan is because of this creation. So he goes and he meets Truman, Harry Truman, the US President, in the chamber in White House, and says, Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands. I feel I am the one who is killer of all the Japanese. Because there was no need to fire nuclear weapons. We were already winning the war. Japan was on peace terms. Yet you fired it. So Truman says, what do you think? When the bomb was flying over the Japanese, would the Japanese be thinking that there was some Oppenheimer who had created the bomb? No. The Japanese would be thinking about me, Truman, that I gave the orders to fire the bomb. So it is not you who is responsible for the bomb, it is I who is responsible for the bomb. And he shut him off. So one of the most senior nuclear scientists was shooed away from the president's office. And once he got out, Harry Truman said to his Secretary of State, don't call that crybaby again in my office. He called him a crybaby. Crybaby, you understand? Don't have a baby, who cries. And afterwards, when all of this happened, Robert Oppenheimer was also puzzled, he was also challenged, he was called a communist. He was, his security was cancelled. Security was cancelled as meaning his security clearance was cancelled. So he also faced a lot of struggle in the United States at that time. So very checkered history of nuclear evolution. But US develops a bomb, fires that bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the World War II comes to an end. There is another very interesting story of Subhash Chandra Bose. I keep on telling stories as time will pass away. Maybe I tell very quickly. So you know what happened in 1942 in India? In India in 1942 we had the Quit India movement. Gandhiji launched the Quit India movement. But before that a number of things had happened. In 1938, Subhash Chandra Bose had won the presidency of Indian National Congress. Okay. But Gandhiji did not want at that time Subhash Chandra Bose to win the presidency. So Gandhiji failed to cooperate with Subhash Chandra Bose. What happened that eventually Subhash Chandra Bose resigned. When Subhash Chandra Bose resigned, he was arrested by the British authorities. He was put in a jail. Somehow, what a witty man he was, he dressed as someone and escaped the jail. Subhash Chandra Bose escaped the jail. From India, he escaped India. From India, he travels to Afghanistan. From Afghanistan, he travels to Russia. From Russia, he travels to Germany. He reaches Germany, he starts living in Germany. In Germany, he goes and meets Adolf Hitler. There is a very famous picture of Subhash Chandra Bose meeting Adolf Hitler. And he asks for support of Indian prisoners of war who are living in Germany for the war against India. Now understand what had happened. In World War I, India was under British control. We were colonies. Britishers used Indian soldiers in the First World War in place of their soldiers. Indian soldiers were very mobile, very active. So, mass number of Indian soldiers fought on the side of British. If you go to the War Memorial in Delhi, they have depicted the number of Indian soldiers that have died in the First and the Second World War. Many of these soldiers were captured as prisoners of war by Germany, and they were in German prisons. Subhash Chandra Bose, after not getting any output from the non-violent movement in India, goes to Afghanistan, Russia, and Germany, and contacts Adolf Hitler and requests him to give him the prisoner of war. Hitler agrees. Hitler agreed to it. And he was given the Indian prisoner of war, and they come to be known as Azad Hind Fauj, AHF. So the first Azad Hind Fauj was formed in Germany. But at that time, the numbers were not sufficient for Subhash Chandra Bose to bring those soldiers back to India. And at that time, there was another man in Malaysia. Malaysia was under Japanese control at that time. So Japan was also expanding in this region. Malaysia was under Japanese control. So there were a lot of prisoners of war in Malaysia also, Indian prisoners of war. And they were being managed by a man known as Reshaped. Reshaped was getting very old. So he calls up Subhash Chandra Bose to come to Japan or Malaysia and take the lead of all the soldiers in Malaysia who are Indian prisoners of war. But how would he go this whole part of the world? So again, meanwhile Hitler also falls in love with the German women there and marries her. And Hitler, not Hitler, sorry, Subhash Chandra Bose. So Subhash Chandra Bose's wife was German, and her daughter is also currently a professor in Germany, living. Very less people know about this. Subhash Chandra Bose married a German wife, and his daughter is also a German professor. She's alive. Now what happens here? He meets Adolf Hitler and requests him to give him a boat to travel to Japan. Hitler says that if you travel in boat, you will be killed in no time, and therefore I will give you a submarine. He gives him a U-boat. It was a submarine. A submarine would travel under the water, very limited visibility. So Subhash Chandra Bose would travel from Germany all the way from English Channel up to the Cape of Good Hope, and from here to here, and from here he reached Japan. Here he meets the monarch of Japan, Tosho, the Japanese monarch. Requests him to hand over the Indian prisoner of war for forming what later becomes the Indian National Army. From Japan, Subhash Chandra Bose comes to Malaysia, meets Rashbihari Bose. After that, Rashbihari Bose passes away, and in 1942 forms the Indian National Army. It was the first army that declared India to be independent, called itself as the Provisional Government of Free India, created a national flag, created a national anthem, created a currency. It was the first army in which women had equal participation. There was a Rani Lakshmibai regiment in the Indian National Army, and it was represented by all communities. Now what happens? Gandhiji launches Quit India movement in 1942. Within the launch was to be made on 8th of August 1942 from WWII to Mumbai. On 9th of August, all the leaders were arrested by the British in India. Okay? The entire Quit India movement became underground. And within a year, by 1943, Quit India movement is over. All the leaders are behind bars. The entire movement has become underground. There are very few socialist leaders like Jayaprakash Narayan and Karuna Safari who are fighting the movement. But the rest of the movement are very cemented. Meanwhile, the radio calls off. The radio beats up, and Subhash Chandra Bose speaks on the radio. मैं सुभाष बोल रहा हूँ. I am Subhash speaking. I am speaking from Indian National Army, and I am about to India. I am about to attack India from the side of Myanmar. He marches his army from Malaysia, from this thin route, takes the army to Malaysia, to Myanmar, and attacks India from Myanmar, with the quest that he would liberate India from the British. At that time, there was a lot of fear because the Japanese were with him. The Britishers would be fighting them here, and the Congress also decried wars. They said that the Indian army should not support the Subhash Chandra Bose at that time. So Subhash Chandra Bose actually comes to Manipur. In Manipur, there is a region called as Moirang. The Indian National Army comes in Moirang and puts up the flag of Indian National Army. But till then, a number of episodes happened, a number of casualties happened. Therefore, they had to retreat back. They were short of ammunition. The Japanese cooperation also declined. So, because of a number of reasons, they had to retreat. And by the time they retreated, they were planning another attack. He came back to Malaysia, and within a year, US attacked Japan in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The entire Indian National Army was based on Japanese support. The moment Japan was decimated, Japan withdrew the support to Indian National Army, and therefore, INA got very weak. Still, Subhash Chandra Bose had not lost his patience and faith. He thought that I would go to Russia, since in Russia now there is a communist government. They would enable us to form an army against the Britishers. But on his path, while he was flying, somewhere around Korea, it is said that his flight crashed. And there are stories around his death. We all know about some claim that he had not died, something XYZ. And those stories are not any useful now. But Subhash Chandra Bose died. But his greatest contribution was not just Indian National Army. The greatest contribution was what happened after Subhash Chandra Bose died. After Subhash Chandra Bose died, in 1945, 1946, there were mass protests across India, Kolkata, Mumbai. The Royal Navy, the Royal British Navy that were led by Indian soldiers, they revolted against the Britishers. They carried the photos of Subhash on the post and said that we will not fight with the Britishers. In Kolkata, there was Royal Indian Navy strike. They strike against the British. So the Britishers felt that because these army personnel are revolting against us, firstly they are inspired by Subhash Chandra Bose. Secondly, they have just come from fighting the Second World War, so they are full of energy. They are thinking that they have helped Britain defeat the Axis powers in the war. So they felt that if the armed forces revolt against the Britishers would have a bloody outgoing of India. So instead of having a very bloody exit, let's do transfer of power. They started negotiating with the Indian National Congress and under the transfer of power and handed over power to India. They feared that if the armed forces would unite against the British government, they would not survive. And the armed forces were ignited by the feelings of motivation of Indian National Army, led by Subhash Chandra Bose. There was another event. When the Indian National Army was defeated, the Britishers brought all the soldiers of Indian National Army, INA, to Delhi for prosecution. And there were three main leaders of INA who were captured on the Red Fort and they were about to be hanged. One was P.S. Dillon, the other was Shahnawaz, and the third was, I'm forgetting the name, but one was Hindu, one was Muslim, one was Sikh. It united all the three communities together, and as a result, a massive outbreak took place, massive protest against the prosecution of INA students. This also contributed in the Britishers perceiving that it is no more possible to rule India without the permission of Indians. I'll tell you the name of the P.S. Sehgal, Prem Kumar Sehgal, who is the third person. Prem Kumar Sehgal, Percy Dillon, and Shahnawaz. These three were brought to the Red Fort to be handed. And this led to a massive outbreak and a massive protest against the Britishers in March 1945. So post-World War II, what happens? Scars of war, nuclear Armageddon. Now these are very good keywords that should reflect in your answers. Nuclear Armageddon. What is Armageddon? Armageddon is very big mass level destruction. Armageddon. Scourge of war, nuclear Armageddon. Fear of another war, massive destruction. New World Order based on liberal internationalism announced by Roosevelt and establishment of United Nations Organization. Let's move ahead. I'll just repeat it. Scars of war, nuclear Armageddon, fear of another war, massive destruction. New World Order based on liberal internationalism announced by Roosevelt. Establishment of United Nations Organization. Bretton Woods Institution. World Bank, IMF, and GATT. Bretton Woods Institution were formed. However, those who at the back can listen if they have not seen it. However, gave way to Cold War. Gave way to Cold War and strategic bipolarity, nuclear arms race. And nuclear arms race. Everyone has written.